Thanks so much for taking the time to meet for me. Could you just speak a little about your background first?
Um, Self-introduction. My name is Raffles. I'm currently a 12th grade student at Shanghai Ping School. Um, I have um, I have just finished my college application season. I gained admission to the University of Pennsylvania, and yes, today we're probably going to talk more about my experience in Abu Dhabi. So it was so I went to Abu Dhabi as part of the regular decision New York University Abu Dhabi Candidate Weekend, which is a program that NYU AZ gave to qualified candidates who applied to the campus. So they gave us like free airplane tickets and a free 3 day experience as part of the campus, as part of an interview, and also just a campus visit.
Wow, that's really cool. What major were you applying for?
History.
For UPenn as well?
Yes, for every university I applied to.
Wow, that's really interesting. Did you go to Abu Dhabi during the recent escalation of tensions with Iran?
Yes, I arrived in Abu Dhabi on in the evening of February the 25th. The Iran war started on February the 28th when in the morning the US and Israel launched airstrikes that killed Ayatollah Khamenei. And yeah, I was in Abu Dhabi on February the 28th. Actually, I was planning on heading back. I have my airplane ticket booked for the evening of February the 28th, but the airplane airspace was closed in the afternoon and no flights were allowed that day. So I stayed there until I was able to, escape on March the 5th.
Wow, that's a much later date. You didn't experience any of the bombings or any of that, did you?
Well, not a lot, but I would say I was a witness because on several occasions we did see witness bombings or the interception of drones of missiles in the sky above us. We did hear very loud sounds of explosions, and I think it was the night of March the 3rd or the 4th. Anyways, it was there was one occasion when the whole hotel was woken up at 3 a.m. in the morning because of the because of our phones received an emergency notice from the UAE government, and they gave out a very large drill sound, and then we heard a succession of like explosion sounds in the air. We saw the white the red um sparks in the sky.
Oh, damn. That's really cool. Throughout all this, do you think that the UAE government was transparent to the wider world about what was happening?
Well, I'd say to a certain extent, it does acknowledge what is currently happening, but it tries to hide some of that transparency. I believe in exchange for like the general stability of the country, because the first impression anyone will stay in the country at like hearing news of it being bombed, being shelled by the Iranian military was a sense of panic. So the government has to hide some sort of information to keep all the citizens pacified, keep us let us not worry that much, because the UAE under the protection of the US, under protection of US military bases, and also because it has a very good air defense system. So we on the ground we were not like necessarily in any danger of being hurt by the bombings. And I believe in the first week around 6 to 7 people died in the UAE in total. Most of them were killed by missile debris that fell after interception. So it was actually not the missiles that struck. Another two, I believe, were killed from casualties that they sustained from the Iran's bombing of Abu Dhabi airport. So it's not like that much danger, but the government just one of the most like important government regulations was that they outlaw anyone from sending photos or videos of explosions on social media. The the university authorities warned us to not take pictures and not share anything like any real pictorial information with our families or with people outside the UAE, because they are afraid this will cause terror and panic, because the situation was actually not that unsafe for us in the UAE at that time. It was only just we have to stay there because the airspace is closed. We cannot go out.
Okay, okay. So in reality, because you know how the UAE and a lot of the Middle East countries like Qatar and Bahrain, they've tried to create an aroma or an atmosphere of that they are completely safe, they're completely impenetrable from attacks. it's a
Yes.
safe haven for everyone. So in reality, do you think that they are genuinely secure or they're much more vulnerable than they appear after having visited it in firsthand?
Well, of course, I would say the UAE and all the surrounding Gulf countries are much more vulnerable than they appear. The stability is generally cultivated because in the past 30 years, there haven't been any major attacks from neighboring countries, and also to try to create this sense of stability for the world to invest in the economy, and which caused like the UAE, Qatar, several countries to become several of the richest in the world. But actually, the I believe the risk has always been there because the UAE is very close to Iran. It's just south of the Persian Gulf. I believe Dubai is only around 100 to 200 kilometers from the Iranian border. So the threat was always there. For example, we know the Middle East has suffered from regional instabilities. I believe it was in 2022 when one time when 2023, I believe, when Israel struck Doha, because Qatar was harboring a lot of Hamas authorities. So it was a very publicized event then when like a lot of Chinese students who were studying at Northwestern University or Georgetown in Qatar, they said that this has impacted their campuses, but this does not occur on such a wide scale until like this year.
That's understood. You said you studied history, right? So, did you what was your main area of focus on for history?
Well, I've studied a lot of different topics. I would say my main areas of focus included Eastern Europe, included the Middle East, including Africa. I
Okay.
have done a lot of historical research on different historical topics, but I would say I am a little bit invested in Middle Eastern history.
Could you share a little bit about your mo maybe your most interesting project related to history?
Well, my most interested project, I would say it was a historical research I conducted in 10th grade, which is 2 years ago. I con Under the guidance of a professor at Northwestern University, I conducted the historical research onto the causalities of the Holodomor, which was the Ukrainian famine from 1932 to 1933. So I try to use different skills. For example, I use geospatial analysis of historical maps. I use primary source analysis of witness diaries, witness testimonies, and try to discern whether the famine was a genocide. So that was one of the more like interesting topics I considered. In 10th grade, I also conducted another historical research project in the Middle East. It was about the Suez Crisis. So it was mostly Egyptian history and Arab nationalism of that period, of the 1950s.
That's really cool. Did those history like did your investigations into the Middle East in any way shape your experience of actually visiting the UAE and things like that?
Well, it helped. I would say most importantly, it helped develop a bit of cultural awareness because my interest in the Suez Crisis really investigate motivated me to learn more about the Arab world and learn more about Arabic culture. Um, so so I am very interested in the in Arabic culture and generally the different cultures, different countries of the region, which was why actually in 10th grade I tried to learn a little bit of Arabic on Duolingo, and also I tried a lot of like different Arabic cuisine in Shanghai, and which is why like during my time in Abu Dhabi, it was actually during Ramadan, so during the fasting period for Muslims, so I coped there really well.
Wow. So you're really invested into the Middle East culture. That's really cool. Um, I want to move on to kind of a different topic. So
Of course.
young people has the disengagement of young people with politics has become an increasing issue. Why do you think that's happened? As a young person yourself.
Well, this is kind of a very general question. I believe generally young people are just pretty much disengaged from the traditional means of conducting politics. For example, because young people's worldviews have been shaped by the internet, by social media. There is a lot of different like there is a lot of expression of different political ideals and also much more direct ways of conducting and expressing your political opinions to garner more attention. So they probably do not are not very interested in the formalities in the political traditions of different systems. which is why I believe politics today, in order to in order to like decrease political apathy, to engage in more people, much more and more politicians and more different political movements have tried to use social media as a platform and as a way to facilitate their own messages.
That's certainly true. Well, since we're on the topic of that, there is indeed a lot more political awareness being spread by TikTok, but like by sites like TikTok. But is that necessarily just complete factual information, or do you think it's also spreading misinformation faster?
I think the most important effect of TikTok and all of these different like social media platforms on the political belief of like young people and also general people was that I think the most important, most significant effect is polarization, because social media can kind of detect what kind of your political views, what kind of messages you like, so they just try to make you like look at and try to ask you to follow like different like more messages that kind of confirm your own political beliefs. So yes, I believe in social media actually where it appears there are a lot of different political messages, many people can just see like the view that they are more invested in. But I believe social media does have this impact of like um how do I say it? Like popularizing different political ideals, they do spread a bit of factual information. For example, the recent Gen Z protests are motivated by like freedom of speech and also different social media democratic values that are spread on TikTok. For example, the protests of young people in Nepal and the change of government in Bulgaria.
Yeah, definitely. Um, but it's also definitely possible for the governments to be utilizing this to kind of spread their own
That is
ideas,
definitely true.
spread positive messaging about their own countries. Um, and it's also very evident in China, where much of any messaging related to that is banned on social media, and it's also a form of, controlling the information that the public receives. Um, since we're on the topic of political polarization, it's actually becomes such a massive issue in the US and all around the world. You see in interviews and debates all the time where speakers just do not listen to each other talking. They constantly overlap. Their views are so differing that there's no room for any coherent discussion. Well, we've already kind of touched on the causes. What do you think are there any potential solutions to this?
Hmm. That's actually a very good question. I believe what comes along with political polarization is, as you have pointed out, when people are more and more invested in their different in different opinions, they tend to like listen less to what the opposition has to say. They tend to listen less to like, for example, suggestions, recommendations. I'm not in the past, political polarization that occurred have led to a lot of different conflicts. For example, a lot of civil wars in between like the liberals and between like for example in 19th century Latin America, between the liberals and the conservatives in Colombia and Uruguay, and the Spanish Civil War in Spain. They're all caused by like left wing and right wing different opposing factions. But as for solutions, I think the most important thing we have to do is so trying to trying to create different platforms and means for different political parties, especially and their like mass bases, to try to talk with each other um, and try to like share their try to listen. We have to find ways like for them to listen to each other's opinions. I believe this is one of the merits of traditional politics, is because they do not try to like get attention by very large like by like by like topics or pressing world issues to try to raise like public anger and direct public sentiments. But in traditional politics, if you can like debate your different policies and you'll try to like you can better realize the benefits and drawbacks of different political positions. And I believe it is quite important to try to return to that, although I'm not sure of a particular solution.
That makes a lot of sense. I also think a common issue that's been identified as like a cause is political tribalism, where,
Mm.
people identify with a specific side and they agree with all the views that that side purports. So if you identify with being a Democrat, you would agree with everything. You would agree with being pro-abortion, being pro-women's rights, and things like
Oh
that. But
yes.
you might not actually agree with those. It's just because that's the side that you've identified with. And then, so people don't actually understand the sides they view. And so I think for me, a potential solution would be, kind of to relax this constant left-right framing and allowing a different mix of views. Uh, so like more uh easier expression of individuality with between different views. Yeah.
Mm. Yes, I think you made a very good point. Like, what is more important for like current young people or the electorate to be more focused on social issues instead of support for a particular ideology?
Yeah, definitely.